I don't really know where to look. Okay. My name's Abby, and I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I don't know how this works. Okay. Yeah, like Matt said, I'm from St. Louis. I have a sobriety date of May 4th, 2014. I have a sponsor. I sponsor other women. I have a home group. If you're ever in St. Louis, and you want to go to an in-person meeting, it's at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays in the Central West End. That's not super important. Anyways, I'm weirdly nervous. I've never done this on I've never done this. Okay. I don't know. I'm a drunk. I don't know. It's not that exciting. Let me start a timer. Otherwise, this will get way out of hand. Yeah, like I said, I'm from St. Louis. I was raised here. I have two parents. They're both alcoholics, and they both got sober before I was born. And I don't know. So I kind of grew up in AA. I remember going to meetings with my parents when I was a kid. And I liked them because I was really small and I was really rowdy. And then it was like the only time that I could go be alone because I would be too loud to be in the meeting. And so they would kick me out and I would go play on the playground. And then we would go eat pizza afterwards and it was great. And I guess I knew about alcoholism for a better part of my life, well, all of my life. My understanding of what it was sort of grew as I grew. And I don't know, from a pretty early age, I felt different, which is what everybody says, right? I just sort of felt out of place and strange. Um, and I think to an extent, I am kind of just a strange person, but it doesn't really bother me anymore. And so I sort of developed this attitude of like, I'm a big fucking weirdo. So if you don't like me, fuck you. And if you do like me, then you are my best friend. You're the only person I'm ever going to talk to. Um, and so it was not like I didn't have a lot of friends. I had like one or two very good friends all the time. And I was a very obsessive kid, which I think is probably something a lot of alcoholics feel. I sort of lived in a fantasy world for a lot of the time. I don't think I was like super invested in what the day to day had to offer me. Um, I don't know. I was just sort of like living in my own world for a long time, and I think even now, sort of, I kind of live in my own world a lot. But um, I don't know. I remember wanting to drink because it wasn't something my parents did and other people did it, and I wanted to know what it was like because I don't know. I don't know where I got the idea of like being drunk is like a free experience, whether it was like TV or movies or whatever. But like, I remember being obsessive about wanting to drink since I was like 12 or 13. As soon as I like found out that people my age were doing it, I really wanted to do it. Um, and I was not cool enough or charismatic enough to find those people who drank or befriend them. So that didn't really happen when I was 12 or 13. But either way, I was obsessed with the idea of getting drunk, and I don't really know where that came from or really when it started. But I did drink for the first time when I was 15. It was great, and I didn't get drunk because my friend, like, we like raided her parents' like beer collection in the fridge, and we had like a couple of beers, and she was like, well, that's all we can have because my parents will find out. And I was like already like just like a little tipsy, being like, I don't give a fuck about your parents. We need to get drunk right now. I don't care what the consequences are. Like, if I get in trouble, who cares? Because I have already had one beer and I need two beers, and then I'm going to need three beers and four beers, right? And I think that's about how it went for as long as I was drinking. I think that sums it up nicely. Um, I didn't really get to drink that much in high school because my mother is a fucking bloodhound and sniffs me out and Then I smoked a bunch of weed instead because that was easier to get, which is kind of weird to think about that weed is easier to get than alcohol, but either way. And so my mission when I got older was to go away to school and get out of St. Louis and um, drink as much as I wanted and not worry about my parents or getting in trouble or this or that. And I didn't even care. Like just an example of me sort of, I don't know. I played competitive sports for a really long time, and then I remember I did it so often that I got really burnt out. And then I remember my mom telling me that if I went and played sports in college, that I wouldn't have a social life. And I was like, well, that's it. Like, I'm not going to play sports in college. Like, I don't give a fuck if somebody's going to pay me to go to school. I don't care about scholarships. Like, I don't care about this thing that I really like. Because what I want to do more than anything is drink and use drugs with no consequences, without any accountability. I don't want to have to be anywhere at any time and do anything that anybody else wants me to do. I just sort of want to be left to my own devices for the first time in my life. And so when I went away to college, that's exactly what happened. I did drink all the time. I did drugs all the time. I didn't go to class. Well, I did, but like barely. I only worked so that I could pay for alcohol and drugs. And that went on for a couple of years. And there were times when I was drinking and I knew something was wrong, right? Like I would be I would come out of a blackout, right? And I would think to myself, you should probably call your dad tomorrow because the shit is so fucked up and you can't stop drinking and it's not normal because your friends don't drink like this. And like some of them did binge drink the way that I did, but most of them didn't do it every night. Um, there are some people who probably, keeping a seat warm for, but for the most part, like I was the one that was acting insane all of the time. And I don't know. I don't know how I didn't fail out of school. I don't know. And like I said, there were so many times that I thought to myself, I should probably call my dad, and I'm just not gonna. Like I would wake up, I would eat something, and then that idea sounded terrible. I would sober up a little bit and decide that that was not the right choice, and that what I really wanted to do was just wait a couple hours until I could get drunk again, and sort of stick it out that way. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm like lost because I'm like so confused about this. Okay. Um, I think it's important to note that that weirdness that I was feeling, that like abnormality. Um, I remember before I went to college, my dad said, if you get to school and you start drinking, because I had never drank and I've never been drunk before, right? And you think it's the best thing that's ever happened to you, you probably shouldn't do it anymore. And I was like, okay, dad, sounds like a plan. Um, and like I said, like at that point, I already been drunk. I already thought it was the best thing that ever happened, and I was absolutely going to do it as much as I could. And so I sort of was just like, all right, fuck you. And so I had this idea in my mind, right, that like the fact that I thought this is the best thing that like could ever happen to me was fucked. And I couldn't really put it into words, but when I got sober, I realized that what happens is that I have an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind, which is what they talk about in the book, right? And so when I would drink, my body would do something crazy, and then I couldn't stop drinking, like physically couldn't stop drinking. And then when I either ran out, passed out, blacked out, whatever, and I like somehow managed to stop drinking, not through my own devices, right? I would think about it and I would obsess about it, and I would, like I said, like I would hold out those 2 hours until it was like 3 p.m. and I could start drinking again. Which was some weird rule that I had. Like I had to wait till the afternoon, right? But I also woke up at 1 in the afternoon, so who fucking knows? But um, So when I look back now, when I'm doing a first step and I'm thinking about my powerlessness over alcohol, I think about that, right? Like I could go out and have 2 beers, right? But then I would immediately go home and get drunk on like shitty boxed wine and like scream to like fucking Fleetwood Mac. And like that's what I did every night. I would pretend in public that I was like kind of fine. And then I would get in my car, I would drive home being so fucking angry, right? That idea that I can't control and enjoy my drinking is like the thing that sort of tethers me, because I know that if I went out, it's like I'd be picking up right where I left off, right? I was not controlling my drinking, and towards the end, like frankly, I wasn't enjoying it. Like I would, like all of us, whatever it is that we're trying to shove down comes back to the surface so quick, right? The longer I drank, the quicker it came back to the surface. It didn't matter if I was conscious or if I was, you know, sober, whatever it was, like it came back to the surface, all those things that I was trying to ignore or trying to put out of my mind or I was drinking about or whatever, right? Like the reasons that we drink, right? And so I don't know, it was like 6 months before I decided to get sober. I made the conscious effort that I didn't care. Like I made a decision in my mind that I was an alcoholic and that there was no like getting out of it, and I was just, that was it. I didn't want to get sober. I didn't want to call my parents. I didn't want to do anything about it. So like this was my life, right? I was going to drink every day and it was going to be totally fine, and I was going to somehow manage, I was going to regulate my emotions somehow, um, which didn't work. And I was just sort of resigned to the fact that this is what it was for me and that's what it was always going to be. And I would sort of make myself feel better by, I don't know, creating all these romantic ideas in my head, these like grandiose things that like, oh, I'm just creative, or like, oh, it's okay, like I don't know, just dumb shit that I would tell myself about who I was to pretend that what I wasn't was an alcoholic. And I mean, it only lasted so long, right? And then in my mind, I was like, well, mentally, I can take this forever, right? Like, I'm gonna be fine. But should there ever come a time where like something physical happens to me or whatever, then I'm gonna have to do something, because if it has anything to do with a large amount of money, it's over because I have no money. And then I popped a bunch of tires and I like, found a way to pay for those and all the new tire belts and whatever the fuck. So eventually I got a DWI. Long story short, I got arrested. And I was 20. So I was like extra, I don't know, they slapped a whole bunch of dumb shit, like not staying in the right lane and like like minor in possession of alcohol. Like obviously I'm a drunk 20-year-old. Like you can't just pop me for the DWI. Whatever, I'm not mad. But so I got a DWI, and in my mind, I was like, there's no way out of this, right? Because I'm going to have to tell my parents. Like, bottom line, I'm on their car insurance because I'm basically just like a drunk toddler. Like, I'm not responsible at all. Like, they're not bankrolling my life because I have a job, but like, they pay for my insurance, so in a way they are. Um, so there was no way out of it. And I knew that. I remember sitting in jail and being like, all right, this is it. It's done. The jig is up. I I put in my best effort on that one, being an alcoholic, and I don't know that I necessarily wanted to get sober, but I wanted to stop being a piece of shit, and I wanted to stop being miserable, and I I wanted to keep drinking, but I didn't, right? Like I just wanted to stop thinking about drinking, if that makes sense. And so I called my dad. I said, I got a DWI, and like I think I have a problem with drinking. And he was like, great, we're gonna come grab the car from you, and drop you off at a meeting. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing it. So, and I was a huge brat about it. I like wouldn't let them come into the meeting with me, and they were like, we don't want to fucking come, you dramatic brat. And I was like about it. And I remember I had to wear all black to this meeting, and it was very dark, mysterious, you guys. Um, and so I went to this meeting, and it was the weirdest group of people I've ever seen in my life. There was like a 13-year-old boy with like purple hair or some shit, and then like a bunch of like drug addled Vietnam vets, and like just like the strangest collection of people, but they were all saying things that I felt, and I was sort of just blown away by that. And they were talking about honesty and like what they did to get sober, and it blew my mind, and it kind of felt like for the first time somebody was saying all the things that I had been thinking for my whole life, basically, like talking about how they felt other than, how they um obsessed about things, how they related to alcohol. And that was, I don't know, I don't think that I went to that meeting and I was like, I'm going to stay sober forever. I don't even think I left that meeting saying that. I think I was just miserable enough and just in enough shit to actually do something for 5 minutes. That whatever they said, like, clicked, right? Like it sunk in. And then for whatever reason, I decided to go to a meeting the next day because I was miserable again, and I weirdly felt better after the last one. So I kind of just did that. I listened. People said go to meetings, and I don't know why I did, but I did. Still not really sure, but I don't know. I just kept going to meetings, and I eventually moved back to St. Louis because my parents were no longer going to deal with my shit living in another city. So I moved back to St. Louis. I took my finals. I went back home, and I found a sponsor um, because somebody said you should get a sponsor, and I think I was just like so ate up, honestly, that I didn't want to wake up every morning and wish that I was dead. And I think that that's really the only thing that motivated me. I was like, I just want to wake up in the morning and not feel this impending doom of just like bullshit. And um I again, like I look back on it now and I'm like, I don't know why I did any of those things, because okay, I'm wrapping it up. Wow, I took way too long. Okay. Um I don't know why I did any of the things that I did when I was new. I I still I because I don't do them now. Like my sponsor suggests things to me and I'm like, I'll take that if I like it. And I don't know what possessed me. I mean, besides the grace of God, right? Which I'm not entirely sure I am hip on. But anyways, so I got a sponsor, I got a home group, I started working all the steps, and things just took off. I don't know. Um, I started to feel better. At some point, I woke up and I didn't want to die. And I think that that feeling itself sort of then even propelled me forward, right? Like, great, I don't want to die. Maybe there's like another benchmark that I could hit, like actual happiness or even just like okayness. Um, and I'm not going to go through all the steps because that would take too long, but I really can't stress how important those are, right? Like, it is the basis of the program. And you know, like I said, just like literally 2 minutes ago, I don't know how I feel about God. I identify as an agnostic. And so when I was doing step 3, it was really just a matter of, are you gonna, like, can you commit to work the rest of the steps? And for me, that's all it took, right? Like, I'm willing to put my life and my will in the hands of the steps. And for whatever reason, that still works for me 5 years later. And so I'm not really gonna fuck with that. Um, so I did that. I took the step 3, and then I finished the steps. And it's funny, I was just talking to a sponsee about this the other day because she called me and she's like, I feel very like I plateaued. And I was like, yeah, that happens to everybody because you work the steps and then you feel better. And then all of a sudden you're not really making any progress, right? In my mind, as a goal oriented person. Um, where do I go now? Like, how do I maintain this, right? And for me, that's sort of what I've been working on since I finished the steps. Like, how do I maintain my sobriety? How do I stay happy? How do I stay at peace? How do I stay in the moment? All of those things, right? And the truth is that time and time again, I go back to the steps, and I think every time something happens in my mind, right, I'm like, well, it's not going to work this time. And then it does. And it's so annoying because I kind of want this to not work for 5 minutes so that I have an excuse to not do it anymore. Um, but that's not the case, right? And my life is so good, and shit happens, and people die, and I don't know, life happens, and what's so great is that no matter what's going on, whether it's good, whether it's bad, there's people around me who pick me up and who carry me along the way, right? And when those people aren't there, like I've got the steps or I've got the literature or whatever it is, and I know that at no point am I going to get dropped on my ass. And truly, like my life is great, and not even in the sense that like everything is perfect, because it's not. I'm super discontented with my job currently. I currently have two jobs, right? And I'm not happy with one of them. It's the most boring shit of my life. But I think about it and I'm like, well, I pay all my bills, right? I I drive a car every day. Like no one else pays for that car. Like it's mine. And like it's all those things that I wanted when I was new, right? I wanted to be independent. I wanted to live alone, not live out of my parents' home. I wanted to own my own car. I wanted to live in the city. I wanted to do all these things, right? And now I do all of them. I'm discontented, right? So I set all these goals for myself, and then I get them, and then I'm unhappy. So for me then it's again, like how do I stay happy, how do I stay sober? And for me it's having a sponsor, it's working the steps, it's calling other women, it's sponsoring other people, it's having a home group. It's that active, um, that that trying to stay present and be mindful of the things that are going on and be grateful for the things that are going on, that I do have, the good that I have in my life. And there's plenty of that. So I really I have nothing to complain about. But I don't know, if you're new, get a sponsor. If you haven't worked the steps, work the steps. If you haven't finished the steps, finish the steps, because there's so much more, right? Like there's so much more out there. Um, and you don't have to wake up and want to die, right? And for me, that's all I needed. So, anyways, I hope that was not nonsense. I'm not used to this forum. It was so strange. But I'm really glad that you asked me to speak, man. I really appreciate it. And welcome to anybody who's new, anybody who is having a birthday. That's all I got.